Steve Dotto here. Last week I got the opportunity to chat with Vince LeBeau, actually from Vancouver, but he was coming to me from Holland where he's doing work with Pagefreezer. Now, Pagefreezer is located in both Holland and Vancouver and I guess around the world. It's an online service that allows you to basically archive your website and social media streams. And it is, for lack of better terms, legal level archiving. The sort of archiving that has to be done to be in compliance with for public sector companies and legal reasons and governments, so that they can prove that their website said and did exactly what they're saying it did at any one particular time. So Vince takes me on quite an interesting tour of Pagefreezer.
Um, yeah, so the two primary business drivers to date have been compliance and litigation preparedness. Boring fields, very dry, but very necessary. Where we've seen PageFreezer go in the last year, which has been really interesting, is people using PageFreezer for a bunch of different marketing and competitive intelligence purposes. The ability to index or save and access competitive websites for business purposes. And we have several Fortune 500 clients that do that on a daily basis, and their marketing teams comb through the various different marketing campaigns from other companies and mix and match both the social media and website content to come up with their own content. It's pretty cutthroat stuff, but it's really it gives them a huge leg up.
Is Pagefreezer looking at basically just the by the website domain, or do you have the ability to? You were mentioning social media. Is it also like tracking the social streams and that sort of stuff?
It is, and I'll demonstrate both of those. When you log in,
Okay.
PageFreezer runs as software as a service, so it's a cloud-based service. What you saw initially was our website, and then I logged into a proprietary or closed environment based on login and password form-based authentication. And what you see now is the PageFreezer dashboard, or what we call our dashboard. And each one of these is a timeline that contains archived websites. So I can scroll through the top section of this by day, or I can scroll through by month, or I can scroll through by year. And everywhere there's a blue dot, there's a fresh archive. And so if I hover over one of the blue dots, it's going to show me when it started and finished, how many files were saved, the amount of storage it took, and the number of files that changed between this snapshot and the last one. Um,
And is it an incremental? Is it like an incremental backup where the each of the files is only really the changes from the previous iteration of the website?
that's correct. It's deduplicated for redundancy purposes and for storage purposes. So we are only saving the files
Okay,
that have changed. Correct. Yeah. So if you were to
got it.
go in and actually access the archives, there are some other archiving systems out there that use screenshots or they use PDF files. One of the requirements for both FINRA and the SEC is that the native files are stored. So when you actually open one of the PageFreezer archives, what you will see is not a screenshot, it's not a PDF file, it's an actual reconstruction within our own environment. So this is a frozen environment, and what you're going to see here is this page is going to be populated with the web content exactly as it appeared on the day that it was archived. Oh, there we
Now, is the reason that
Tired of
is
you.
I mean, is the extra value of capturing all of the information the fact that you're then getting any tracking cookies, any other extra code that's on the site that's beyond the visual?
Yes, and essentially, for compliance purposes, they want an accurate representation of what was on the site on any given day. In fact, for litigation preparedness purposes, you have to prove that the content hasn't changed since it was archived, and that's called data authenticity. And the second component is data integrity, which means that the you can prove at what point it was archived and where it was archived from. And I'll show you how we actually accomplish that. McDonald's is it's an interesting example because they have four different content management systems in four different geographical locations. So they don't actually have a central repository of all their web data. But by amalgamating it through PageFreezer, what you see here is a hierarchy of all of the files that make up this McDonald's website. Um, there are now three different ways that I can navigate through the site. The first one is I can actually go through and navigate through this particular snapshot as a normal client side user would. As you can see, all of these files are the native formats. It's not a screen capture or anything. I can also navigate by using the hierarchy. So I can click on a page in the hierarchy, and it's going to actually go ahead and load that in my browser window here. Or and what's obviously unique to archiving is I can navigate temporally or through time. So I can go up and access my calendar here. Wherever there's a bold date, there's a new archive. So I can jump
Mm-hmm.
forward, say, a month in advance, and it's going to refresh my page and show me what was on this particular URL a month in the future. The small lock symbol that
Got
appears
it.
here, the small lock symbol that appears right here,
Yep.
um, this is showing a hash mark. All of the elements that were checked into the archive are applied a 256-bit digital signature, and that's what we use to make sure or to ensure and be able to prove data authenticity. In other words, that the data hasn't been tampered with or otherwise unintentionally corrupted or somehow changed from the point of being archived. Uh, the hash mark wouldn't line up if it were to be changed. The second thing that we do is
Okay.
we timestamp with a stratum 1 atomic clock every single element that goes into the archive. So it proves where it came from and at exactly what time it was archived. So every single element in the archive is both digitally signed and timestamped. And what you see here is just an actual native reconstruction of the website. We've tried to make the interface as simple as possible so that even the most basic users can access the archives. A lot of the people that we work with are compliance officers or the legal teams. And now with the sort of latest product iterations, we work with a lot of marketing folks who want to be able to go in and look at their competitors' sites that they have archived. And so we've made the interface as simple as possible. You can actually search for specific terms and it will search this particular snapshot. Or I can go back out to my dashboard and search all of the archives at once. Now, obviously we get into terabytes and terabytes of data here, so we need to be cautious as far as time goes. But we can search through all of these. As far as the social media accounts go, we used to just crawl the face of the actual web display, but we've become licensed developers for Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn, and soon YouTube. And what that enables us to do is actually tie in at the application programming interface level or the API level. What we found was happening is people would post something onto, say, Facebook. A bunch of people would spam them and say, "You idiot, you can't put that on Facebook," and they would pull it down. And so if our archive was, say, archiving between 12 and 1 p.m. and somebody posted something at 4 and deleted it at 5, we were missing it. So for both litigation and compliance purposes, we were unable to capture that data. So now we tie in at the API level. We don't miss anything. So what you see here is
Okay.
again an interface that we've created. These are tweets from the Oppenheimer Funds account. It specifies what type they are. This is the digital signature that's been applied to the actual content. It shows the message and then the sender and at the time that they were sent. I can, for some reason, this is refreshing, which is odd, but I can actually change the time period and it will update the results below. I can also search for particular um,
Got it.
terms. So, and it's going to return all of the tweets that contain this term. And actually refresh this page. Um, yeah, that's better. So I can go ahead and I can search through huge amounts of data very quickly, and it's going to return it to me. I can also expand or contract the amount of time that it's looking through, which allows regulators or even just marketing people or normal people within a corporation to go through huge amounts of Twitter data very quickly. We can also
Mm-hmm.
filter by sender. So I can specify a particular sender. I can actually export parts of the archive. So if I've searched and captured a specific view, I can export to a CSV file for opening up in Excel, or I can export the entire archive. And those are typically tools for record retention purposes. We do have some new technology coming out that actually leverages having your social media data stored in that fashion. As you know, there's dozens of different social media monitoring services, but none of them actually capture the data. They just work with the live data. Pagefreezer,
Yeah.
the ability to actually work with archive data and show trends that are very valuable, especially to the larger companies that are investing millions into the different campaigns that they have.
Now, are the companies licensing your software individually, or are they going to a third party and then having an amalgamator that kind of has an extra arm's length relationship as far as that goes? Or is that really what the role that you guys do?
Yeah, that's the role that we play. Most of our customers come to us directly. We do have some partners. We partner with Global Relay, who are the largest email archiving company out there, and ironically, or coincidentally, I should say, are based out of Vancouver as well. They've been an excellent partner for us, and we do have some other strategic partners, but typically the companies are coming directly to us. Um, so again, what you see here is Facebook posts. We are updating this so that it will actually look exactly like a Facebook post. That's coming out this month. But again, what you see here
Okay.
are the different posts and videos. Um, you know,
Yeah.
social media is so new, and the archiving of it is turning out to be, it's not trivial technology. It's a lot of proprietary technology that's pulling this through the API and displaying it correctly. But now that we've got it up and running, we get a lot of customer feedback as to what they want to do with this data beyond just storing it.
Yeah.
We roll
This is, I mean, being able to search through and do intelligent analytics on, the things like your social media stream and commentary and stuff.
exactly, and
Yeah,
that's why
pretty valuable.
it's incredibly valuable. And we're actually going to be partnering, announcing a partnership with one of the major analytic companies soon, where we're doing just that. We're showing.
Yeah, I'm just wondering how you guys are staying up. I'm, I'm just wondering how you're staying under Adobe's horizon at this point.
Well, Adobe have, of course, Omniture that they acquired a few years back, and yeah, I mean, there's some exciting potential for the company as far as partnerships and that sort of thing. And because we store the data, we can manipulate it in any way we want. And a lot of customer feedback has come back on the analytics front to be able to actually cross-reference the social media activity with what happens on the website. We're able to tie that and not only give a current snapshot, but give a historical index as to how that interaction has either driven traffic one way or the other, which is something that most companies can't do because they don't have access to the data, historically speaking. So that's how the Facebook and Twitter archives work. Um, Based
Yeah.
again on customer feedback, we've also come up with a new feature called the reporting feature. And what this feature enables you to do is to show a change report between two websites. Obviously, it's great to have an archive from Friday and Monday, but if it's a 10,000 page website, how do you tell what's changed between Friday and Monday? Doing it manually can be a very onerous process, obviously. So what this allows you to do is select two snapshots that you want to compare, and then select the fields. We're actually going to be adding more fields here as far as what you want to compare, but currently it's the URL, file type, changes, and snapshot. And then I can go ahead and I can generate a report, and Pagefreezer is going to show me in detail every single file that changed between those two sites. Obviously, on some of our larger sites, there's going to be thousands of changes. Even on this, which is a relatively small site, there's over 4,000 files that have changed here. And it shows you in what way they were changed, whether they were added, updated, deleted, um, uh, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So there's, over 200 pages of file changes here, but this was requested specifically by clients who wanted to be able to go through and see, how many images have changed, for example, and I could have gone back to my, um, see, images only. So it's going to update my results here and only show me all my images that have updated. It's a great tool for both managing web content as well as managing records for records retention purposes. So that's the reporting feature that we've come out.
So how how do you guys? I think I got a pretty good feel for the offering. How
Yeah.
do you go about marketing and selling to the community?
Okay, well, obviously we promote the business within the financial industry because that's probably our biggest amount of customer traction to date, given the strict compliance rules that they have, regulations that they have. We market, through social media, website, email promotions, and those sorts of things directly to financial firms. But it's an interesting question in that since I've come on board with Pagefreezer, we've found that there are many new markets that can benefit from this technology, both from a marketing perspective, from a compliance perspective, and certainly on the legal side. I mean, I came across an
Hmm.
interesting situation the other day. A friend phoned me, not knowing that I was working with Pagefreezer, and said, "Hey, man, I just went to this website and they've got my logo." And they're using it illegally. They've changed the lettering and they're using my logo, man. What do I do? How do I prove that? And I said, well, I've got a technology for you. Um, we've got a lot of traction in the legal sector using Pagefreezer for evidence capture, being able to go in and permanently capture a page. What often happens in legal disputes is, you'll send a cease and desist letter to the owner of a website saying you're using my copyright or my trademarked logo or my copyrighted information on your site. Please stop. They'll pull it off the site and then deny ever that it was ever there. What Pagefreezer does is it gives you evidentiary quality versions of that site that you can take into court and say, no, I'm sorry, I have a digitally signed, time stamped version of their site, and I can prove that on this day this is what was on their site. So we're getting a lot of traction in the legal community on that side. I've already spoken about.
How does
Go ahead.
how does your pricing model work then? Like, it's obviously it'll be fairly self-evident how you can put together pricing for me to archive my site for
Mhm.
my own legal protection. But if I'm using it in a more predatory manner, I don't, the word predatory is not right, but in a more aggressive manner where I'm looking and monitoring my competitors' sites
Yes.
for either for analytical data or for a competitive advantage if we ever go head to head in a lawsuit or something. I mean, if I'm Bank of Montreal, well, I've got 150 financial institutions worldwide that I want to be monitoring. How do you set up your pricing structure to allow for that?
Okay, so we don't really have any customers at this point that are monitoring that many competitors. I think
Yeah.
in the client database that I deal with directly, I think we've got one major retailer in the U.S. that monitors 15 of their competitors, and
Okay.
basically we give them a flat rate per month. Now, if you were to just come
Okay.
and say, I want to archive Dotto Tech in case .com in case somebody sues me, what I would do is I would crawl the site and we would get an accurate representation of how large it was. And then the
Mm-hmm.
second factor in the pricing matrix is the frequency. Do you want it archived on a daily basis, a weekly basis, a monthly basis? What kind of time increments? So the two things that cost us are not so much file size as the number of files that are on a site. So we charge per URL and the frequency with which they're archived. Um, Sites can range anywhere from $35 a month to $5,000 a month to archive,
Okay.
and
That's
that
are you dealing are you dealing a lot with the ISPs themselves? Is this like can you guys package your product up as a plugin, an add-on at ISP level? Like I buy my GoDaddy account and for X number, for having them kind of white label your product.
we don't currently. I know we're in discussions with some. It's not GoDaddy, but a couple of the major ISPs in the
Yeah.
U.S. Under exactly those lines, but currently we don't. No.
Because I guess based on different countries' own internal laws, I mean, I could see the CRTC coming down in Canada saying that the ISPs are responsible for ultimately all the content on the sites, and all of a sudden they're going to have to be, trying to figure out a way to protect themselves, right?
Oh, certainly. I mean, websites is an interesting. Websites are a very interesting sort of medium in that typically you've got a fairly uh, a set team of web developers or what have you that are controlling the content on the site. But the amount of litigation involving websites in the last 5 years, for example, has been staggering, and some of the settlements have been huge. And that's why we have a very large customer base in the Fortune 500 because they're getting sued all the time and they need this in court. Um, where we're really picking up a lot of business is on the social media side of things. Unlike a website where there's only, say, a group of 20 people or maybe 30 people who can change the content, suddenly you've got it so that anybody can post anything to your site, to your social media account. And it's really
Yeah.
not clear at this point who's responsible for it. Is it?
Yeah, well, 'cause every time anybody does anything embarrassing, they claim their site was hacked anyway. So,
Sure, sure. But we have a list of over 1,700 lawsuits from last year that we send to customers who are wondering why they should archive their social media site. And really, any business these days that doesn't archive their social media accounts is just asking for trouble. The amount of litigation that is going on is staggering. The Gardner Group actually estimate that it will increase by 700% by next year, the amount of litigation. So it is just a legal free for all. In Australia, they recently ruled, the ACCC recently ruled that if somebody posts something to your corporate site, the company is responsible for it, not the individual, not Twitter, not Facebook, but the company. So you need somebody constantly monitoring your site and deleting anything that's inflammatory, racist, violation of copyright. We had a customer recently in a county. We archive a government site in the U.S. And a disgruntled employee left the police force and posted the names and addresses and personal telephone numbers of a bunch of undercover detectives, and things like that.
wow.
It's so easy with social media to really create huge problems for these different companies, and who's responsible. The one thing that's become abundantly clear is that if you don't have an accurate representation of what was on your social media account and a defensible one, then you're in even deeper trouble. So with the social media accounts, we typically charge a set rate per month for corporate accounts. And then in the case of LinkedIn or personal Facebook or Twitter accounts, we have a reduced price for that. So, you mentioned a Canadian bank earlier. I can't mention the name of a certain bank, but we have a certain bank in Canada that, they archive their website, all of their affiliate websites. They also archive their corporate Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn accounts, and then they have 5,000 employee accounts also being archived. So it's a great little niche business, and we just see the market expanding
Yeah. So
constantly.
how big are you guys? How many?
Pagefreezer
So how big is your sale? Sorry.
Pagefreezer currently has a development team that works out of Europe here. That's about 11 people or 12 people, and then we've got about a similar amount on the sales and sort of executive side of things. So it's about a 20 plus person company at this point. But again, and this is obviously off the record, but the ownership structure is Pagefreezer currently owned by a company in the Netherlands that has done very well, and so it's got a very solid financial backing from an ownership standpoint. But unlike most startups, Pagefreezer is cash flow positive and actually making a considerable amount of money, which is amazing for a startup. And the third thing is there's a bunch of interested investors in Vancouver who are looking to back the company and grow it and take it to the
I can
next.
imagine. It sounds like a fun. I mean, your sales and marketing strategy and trajectory is a lot of fun. I mean, because you guys, you're right in the heart of Web 2.0 as far as everything's concerned. So all of the different new techniques and tools around social media marketing, and you guys are going to be able to employ all of those as you move ahead, which is, I think, makes it a lot of fun because it's a voyage of discovery, since there's no hard and fast rules for moving ahead, is there?
Exactly. Yeah, and that's also part of our challenge as well, though, is these constantly evolving technologies require us to stay on top. When we were crawling just the face of Facebook, they were changing the way they were displaying the pages, sometimes every 3 days, which
Yeah,
would break what we were doing for a week. By the time we caught up, they changed it again. So now,
yeah,
at the API level, we don't have those issues anymore. But even with websites, some of the client side technology, one of the strengths of Pagefreezer is that it's not a server side technology, because you can save these files on the server side and probably encrypt them, but it wouldn't be useful in court or to a compliance officer, because they don't know what a normal everyday user who logs in and goes in through their browser would see. They're just seeing a collection of files
exactly.
on the server, whereas
Yeah,
Pagefreezer is crawling from the public perspective and is showing what the average everyday user saw on the site. And some of these companies have gone through some horrible forms of litigation. I mean, McDonald's is an excellent example. 3 years ago, they posted the rules to the Monopoly contest on their website, and according to the public, the initial iteration said you only needed Park Place and you won $1 million. Well, of course, we all know that you need Boardwalk as well. And by the time people had claimed, a bunch of people stepped forward to claim their prize, the mistake on the site had been corrected, and there was this huge dispute as to what was actually on the site at any given time. And so, even subtle things like that can become very expensive in litigation and in public
Oh
relations.
yeah.
People like to pick on these big companies. We deal with a major grocery retailer in Canada who's recently had a lawsuit with a small vendor who took to YouTube to spam the company. And suddenly they're looking at countersuits and they're looking to capture all of this. This basically a campaign against them from Facebook, Twitter, and all the other different venues that this company has taken to basically defame their company. And so it's a really interesting business because we provide tools to help companies either defend themselves or to go out and litigate when people are clearly violating their rights. And really, there's no other technology for it. Like when my friend phoned the other day, I mean, I did go and I looked at the website, and sure enough, somebody had actually taken the logo that he spent a lot of money on and a lot of brand awareness money behind it, and they just took the text off it and put their own text on it and started using it like it was their own. And his interesting question was, how do I capture that? How do I prove in court later what I saw in my browser that day? So Pagefreezer offers a really excellent service for both the aggressive side of a lawsuit and the defensive side. It also brings a lot of depth to marketing departments, as you mentioned, analytics. So it's got some great scope, and we're just sort of at the very tip of the iceberg as far as traction goes. So it's exciting.
The last question I'll have here is, what about education, universities?
As far as litigation goes, are you asking that from an educational perspective in that learning about the software, or could you
No,
elaborate?
no, no. As far as is them archiving their,
Oh,
their,
you know,
you know,
the
their,
the
a
amount.
lot of them are publishing papers on an ongoing basis and that
Oh,
sort of
for
stuff.
sure. Well, the amount of litigation, there is again, I can't mention a specific name. There's a college back east who published their schedule. 700 foreign students came over to take a course and were relying 100% on getting certain accreditation at the end of it. And they were halfway through the year and realized they didn't get that accreditation. And they sued the college based on the fact that suddenly they're in a foreign country spending tens of thousands of dollars to live there, and they're not going home with the diploma they thought they were. That's a perfect example of what happens in the academic community. We do work with a few different Canadian, actually, colleges and universities, and we're in the process of signing a couple of deals with major American universities as well. Um, the amount ranging from the research papers right through to just the actual administration of the schools. There was an interesting incident in Vancouver Island last year when one of the schools there went on strike, and several of the professors and teachers went on to Twitter and basically spammed the school. Well, then the strike ended, and they went back to work, and there was some, obviously some legal issues with what was said during the strike, right? So in the academic community, yes, for sure. That, and you've got just a lot of creative ideas that need to be protected coming out of schools. So, yeah, we've seen some traction there as well.
And there you have my interview with Vince LeBeau from Pagefreezer. Certainly a very interesting service online. A niche market, but what has to be a huge niche market. I'm Steve Dotto. Thanks for spending time with us today.